thanks for having me this afternoon, I appreciate it. And hopefully everybody at the table here got their cold case cards. So these are something that was not paid for with an appropriation. These were funded with donated funds from the Sheriff's and Deputies Association, from the County Attorneys Association, from other law enforcement groups as well. And these cards have been distributed to places like jails, rehabs, prisons, places where we hope that if somebody knows something, they will come forward. Each card has a cold case on it, and it's just a good reminder of how everybody matters. We never give up. We have over 400 unsolved cold cases in Iowa, some of them quite old, but you know, we just know everybody matters, and these cards are a good reminder for that. We've had some great success with our cold case unit that I'm going to touch on briefly, and then we'll get right into the slide presentation. But our cold case unit serves the entire state of Iowa and works with state, federal, and local law enforcement. We have several cold cases right now that have been charged and are awaiting trial. And so I won't go into the details of those because we want those people to have, of course, their day of justice in court. But I'm glad that those cases are moving forward, and just if you hear something from any of your constituents that believes they may know something about a cold case, please encourage them to either call or email our office or get in touch with their local law enforcement agency to do that. Sometimes a little thing can be very significant when it concerns a cold case, and the passage of time should not discourage us. One of the cases that's awaiting trial that my office is prosecuting is 36 years old. So it just tells us that these cases are worth looking into, and that we want to make sure that murderers are held accountable for what they have done. And I want every family and community that's been impacted by a cold case to know that we never give up. There will always be somebody there to take those leads and to be working those cases. So thank you for that. Appreciate the cold case unit. We'll just jump right in with our slide presentation. So we're going to start off with our office budget breakdown. I know some of you would already know this, but about 29% of our office's budget is general fund appropriation. About 47% comes from money billed to agencies, and the rest of it is $8 million that is from consumer protection funds, and about $600,000 in grants. So that is how our office is funded. This does not include the grants that our victims assistance portion of our office provides to victim assistance organizations, because that passes through to those entities. But this is how our office is funded, with about, right now, $37.2 million. So that is how we lay that out. And then our next slide, we'll pull that one up. That means that it's a funding challenge, that the appropriated money that we get, it pays only a portion of the cost of the AG's office. So I really appreciate our appropriation. And this appropriation pays for parts of the office that aren't paid for by the other means. So that includes things like our statewide prosecutors, our cold case unit, our civil litigators, those that work for the Department of Corrections and other certain other agencies, as well as the entire criminal appeals part of the office as well. So significant amount of work that's done with those appropriations. So thank you for your support for that. Wanted to talk a little bit about our statewide prosecution section. About 55% of the cases that our office prosecutes involve a sexually violent predator commitment. 42 trials just for committals last year alone. And then have some other examples of some of the statewide prosecutions. I want you to know we are available to every county in the state. Even a large county might have a conflict of interest and would need our office to come in on a case. We're also available for rural counties, or all throughout the entire state, all 99. And so here's an example, Jeremiah Estrada, who was sentenced to 75 years for 3 counts of sexual abuse in both Worth and Cerro Gordo counties. So just to give an idea of the types of cases that we serve. And then we have here, we also bring prosecutions under our trafficking laws. That's often the type of case that we would assist in. This is one, believe it was the first state trafficking prosecution under the new law. Jared Anderson was sentenced to life after trafficking a 17-year-old girl in Lynn County, a significant case. And we were made ready to either assist counties with trafficking prosecutions or to handle those prosecutions. We have 38 criminal jury trials that have been prosecuted by our statewide prosecutors in 2025, and these are major, for the most part, major cases that take a great deal of work and are very important to the families and communities impacted. So Katrina Cooper, she was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of her husband in Tama County. That's another example. And then we also prosecute cold cases all across Iowa. This is a case where the defendant was found guilty of second-degree murder of a teenager who went missing back in 2017. The victim's body was never found, and this is a Wenatchee County case.
And that's a direct result of some of the work done through the cold case?
Yes, yes. I'm not going to talk about the pending ones just because I prefer not to go into those. You can certainly read the newspaper accounts and get some of those facts as well. And I want to add this, we actually took a look at the members of this subcommittee, and we have prosecuted or helped with cases in every single person's district here represented around the table. So we want to be available to every county and help in the way that is the most helpful for them. And then we've also had election fraud referrals. 6 of these referrals have turned into felony cases for people who have voted without United States citizenship. And as you know, both state and federal law require someone to be a U.S. citizen in order to vote in an election. So we do have responsibility, exclusive jurisdiction for election integrity prosecutions.
Representative Wilson-Rochelle.
Sorry, can you update us on what the status of those cases are? I know that at least one has been prosecuted, but have all of them been prosecuted?
Of the 6? Or
There's 7 there.
Yeah. We can get you a list of all of those. They're all in different states. Many of them have been prosecuted.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what has been the results of those?
We can give you the results of all of those as well if that's something that you want. If the public information aspect.
Yes.
Certainly. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And we will continue to get those types of referrals in our office as they are investigated as well. So that number can change. All right. So here we just thought we'd show you a little map that shows all the requests that we've had coming in around the state just from last year. So just because a county didn't reach out on a significant case last year doesn't mean that our office didn't help them with some things, but you can see our statewide prosecutions unit is really having an impact across the entire state, and we serve every corner of Iowa. Yeah, so I'd like to talk about a request that we have for a special victims unit that's in our prosecution request. For our special victims unit, we're asking for funding for 4 FTEs, that would be 3 prosecutors and a paralegal. This special victims unit would focus on certain types of cases where special concentration is needed. Human trafficking cases, both labor trafficking and sex trafficking, sexual predator, sex abuse cases, so it might be a rapist or child molester, and then those who prey on the vulnerable people in our society, perhaps the elderly, the disabled, and others, where we want to be sure that people are held to account and that people are protected. And in some of those categories, you can see why that type of criminal might be operating in more than one county or might have more than one victim. And we'd really like to have an emphasis there so that we can keep Iowa safe, get justice for victims, but also work across county lines with county attorneys. So that's what we're requesting for the special victims unit.
And Attorney General Gordon, you mentioned that 55% or so of your cases that you prosecute are already the sexual predator or sexual violent predator type category.
Yeah.
So you're already doing some of this work. Where then does these 4 additional FTEs really fit into the whole picture of all the things you're already doing?
They would be part of our statewide prosecutions unit. We would work together. and pool resources in that way. But as you can imagine, prosecution of predatory sexual offenses and human trafficking are very important cases statewide. Not only because a trafficking case would cross county lines, state lines, also would involve at times the federal government and other layers of law enforcement, but we also know that interrupting human trafficking rings or stopping someone who is sexually abusing victim after victim is so important. So we would like to be able to do more there and to help counties with more of their cases. And also one thing that our statewide prosecutions unit does is they're also very involved in training law enforcement all across Iowa. And so as we are doing that, that will help us build more human trafficking cases, help us build stronger cases to lock up a child molester or other type of predator. We see a growing need there, and we would really like to be able to serve it. And we will do everything with what we have now to prosecute those types of cases.
And it's unfortunate that's a growing need, so, but thank you.
It is, it is. All right, this is another item that we have in our appropriations request that I just wanted to explain. So the people that are part of our office and are funded by general fund dollars, when the governor gives a cost of living increase, we also would give that to those employees as well, just like the other employees in the office. And the raise that we gave last July cost us this amount of money. And so if we aren't able to get that amount in addition in our appropriations bill, we'll have to cut staff until we get to that number so that our budget can balance. And so the staff that are paid for with general fund appropriation are our statewide prosecutors, our civil litigators, criminal appeals, folks that work in that area. So that's why we're highlighting that. That's the amount that it cost for the raise that was given last July. We usually lag about a year behind by the time we get to the Appropriations Committee because we don't know today what the governor will do with the raise that would be announced for July of this year. And I know we touched on traffic, and I know from conversations with committee members here that that is a very important area that's important and area that everyone on this committee cares about. And I want to say thank you for what you did last year providing, we've asked for $1 million to help to serve trafficking victims. You provided $150,000, and I just wanted to give a little report on how that was used. And I promise you that every dollar that is provided to help human trafficking survivors, that doesn't fund prosecutors, that goes to fund agencies that help survivors and the services that they get. It helped 45 victims of human trafficking. 45 victims of human trafficking. 5 were labor trafficked, 39 were sex trafficked, and 1 was a child under the age of 18. And so it helped with things like connecting them with shelter, care, rental assistance so that they could have a place to live, and other services that they needed in order to get on their own 2 feet.
And for how long were you able to do that?
Well, we knew that was all that we had for the year, and so we were able to help 45 people with that. If we had more money, we would be able to do more. As you can imagine.
How long, not how many?
Oh,
How long?
How long? That was what we spent for all of, oh, I understand now. How long? Oh, how long for each victim in the housing?
Just having some
Okay.
personal experience over
Okay.
the summer, that's a months if not years long endeavor.
It is, yeah.
And $150,000 would be eaten up in short order.
Yes.
So, I'll get into the other part of this too, but I'll just get into it now.
Yeah.
You may know, spoken to your staff and Representative Ramirez and others in here are familiar with this. A bill that will probably be put to the floor this week for a human trafficking task force that talks about prosecutors dedicated to the mission, investigators dedicated to the mission, and people that are dedicated to victim advocacy liaison, so that we have people that are connected to those organizations with investigators, with the prosecutors. So this money to me is part of that effort. We have not discussed where the money's coming from yet, but I would would certainly support that amount, if not more, because of the complexity of what these victims have gone through, and I can talk for hours about that. I'll just let you know that.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, and the need is great, and I can tell you that every dollar that you give us for victims assistance for trafficking victims, we will work to help as many victims as possible, that the money goes to the need. I promise you we do that. And then with our special victims unit, that is what funds prosecution. So, this funding is just for the survivor and victim services.
Representative Ramirez?
I'm curious, you mentioned that there was the request for $1 million
Yes.
dedicated specifically towards human trafficking victims. How many victims were you projecting to be able to assist with that $1 million budget?
Yeah.
And is that proportionate with the 45 victims for the 150,000?
It wouldn't be proportionate. We wanted to show how we could serve victims with the $150,000. And so what we would do with the $1 million, well, one thing is lack of safe housing is a major barrier to get someone out of the life of trafficking. We know that housing is important for all victims of crimes, but especially trafficking victims being safe there. And so sometimes the lack of safe housing and some kind of hopefully employment later can be a very real problem. So the additional funding that we would get, let's say we would get the $1 million, it would help us with stable housing as people went down that healing journey and were able to get employment. There would be programs that could help with that. And then other barriers that are there for independence when it comes to victims and survivors. So sometimes it's having a working vehicle, access to reliable transportation, counseling, medical care, if there are children, all of those types of issues would be things that we would look at for the $1 million. So what we will do is when we know what's available, then we work with the victim services agencies and we figure out how can we serve the most people with this money.
Thank you. And you mentioned 5 of the 45 were labor
Yes.
trafficking victims. This is just from what I've seen, a lot of the service providers that exist in Iowa, rightfully so, right, are designated towards sexual abuse victims, domestic violence victims as well. I'm curious, are there any organizations that you know of that work directly with labor trafficking victims? And follow-up question, my guess is that 5 is severely underestimated of how many people actually are victims of labor trafficking. Specifically when we're looking at migrant populations who hold, H-2 visas, et cetera. Can you speak a little bit to that and what you would hope to be kind of the goal in terms of labor trafficking as well?
Yep. To be clear, the 45 people, we're not saying that's inclusive of all of the trafficking victims in Iowa, or even that it's the breakdown is necessarily representative. We're working to try to help as many people as we could with the resources that we had. And so one of the things about trafficking is because it's a crime, until it's prosecuted and brought to light, it can be very hard to know exactly what the numbers are. And so when my office trains and works with county law enforcement, but also with county attorneys, we talk both about labor and sex trafficking and the signs of each.
Representative Madison, do you have a question?
Yes. Are there federal funds that do these things as well that you have access to get victims back into society and indemnity and all of those things, health, legal?
Yeah, there are federal funds, and we do access a lot of federal funds to help all crime victims. And so it would be the Violence Against Women Act, sometimes VOCA money, depending on different situations. We look at that, and then periodically we have folks in our Victims Assistance Division that will look and see the grant programs that are out there and see if there are any that we would qualify for where we can help people using those programs. So certainly if you would hear of something that you think would be helpful, please let us know. Sometimes there are even private grants that can be possible. We're very interested in working on all of those things and doing everything that we can do to help that way. The hope with the dedicated trafficking fund to help victims and survivors is just that recognition that for many who are trafficked, that path to recovery is longer and can be very very difficult, and we want to make sure that we're not just concluding a prosecution and thinking that that's the end. It's not the end. It's a very important result to prosecute and hold people who traffic and other human beings accountable, but it's certainly not the end of the work to achieve justice. And I think you would find different stories out there about how long it takes, but I routinely hear 18 months, sometimes longer, as someone is trying to go through that path to recovery and get help. There can be addiction issues, mental health issues, all kinds of things that someone is working through. And so we've seen programs out there, but as you can imagine, an 18-month program is quite intensive and very helpful, but also is costly.
Thank you. Just two things. Number one, first I would say last year was a major win for us to be able to at least get a fund dedicated to human trafficking and victim assistance. And I know it was not funded near as much as what I wanted, but even to get the Senate to agree to create the fund and put a little bit of money in there was a major win. So for those that would agree with me that $1 million would be where that should be, please make sure you talk to both Speaker Grassley, but also and especially to your Senate counterparts over across the hall. So those are two critical pieces of trying to get more in the budget for that. The second piece, and you and I have had this discussion, but on VOCA funding, but if you could fill in the committee with regard to, obviously a couple years ago, we talked about some instability potential in that.
Well, massive devastating cuts. It was massive devastating cuts. It was cutting funding in half for most agencies around Iowa. It was very bad. And so those cuts actually happened. Thankfully, Governor Reynolds came forward with ARPA money and filled that hole with that funding so that people can keep their doors open and the funding could be leveled. So we are so thankful for that. That had a statewide impact that affects all of us. And then this year, when we look at the funding, it doesn't appear that kind of drastic cut is on the horizon. If it is, we certainly will let you know, but at this point, we don't anticipate that. So, and I want to add this too with the trafficking funding. I meet with victim services, agencies, and advocates all over Iowa and every part of the state, and it is routinely brought up to me how much they appreciate this human trafficking fund and what that means to them. So, thank you, and I know $150,000 may be less than $1 million. It's still very much appreciated, and every bit that you're able to give us, we will work to be good stewards of that money and help as many people as we can. We appreciate it a lot. It meant so much. It means so much to them to know that there's something that can help people. So thank you. All right. We'll switch to another topic here, professional licensing enforcement. So my office does that. We have some examples here where, we have cases that we bring in our office. Often someone has engaged in some pretty bad conduct and their professional license is on the line and should be taken from them. But there's a court process that we go through to do that, often a very labor-intensive process. So here, the first person we have here is Kenneth Wayne Clark. He's the man that you see in this picture. He was a registered nurse who provided care for disabled children, and the Board of Nursing issued an emergency order to suspend his license in October after they found both narcotics and child sexual abuse material in his possession. His license was ultimately revoked in December, and he has a pending criminal case as well. So when we're talking about needing money for professional licensing, sometimes this is the type of case that we are working on. They really do run the gamut. And then also another common type that we are seeing increase, this one here on the right, where you see the stethoscope. This is one for a massage therapist from Cresco, Mackenzie McCarroll, and she was hired to provide massage therapy to hospice patients in Howard County. She was investigated by the Board of Massage Therapy, and they found probable cause that she'd taken morphine from patients in hospice. She agreed to surrender her license to resolve the case. So just wanted to bring the types of work that we're doing. As part of our request, we are asking for additional money to hire 2 more attorneys and 1 more paralegal to help us with the rising number of these cases. I do think that it's important that when we have a nurse or a teacher or other licensed professional that, due to the fact, should not have a professional license, that we have all the resources we need to be able to do what we have to do to take their license, so they don't just go into another job or a similar type of job.
Was the person who was given morphine, was something done to him other than take his license away, like prosecuted?
You mean the woman, the massage therapist?
Yeah.
We can check on the prosecution of that. We can see where that was, so, yep. Typically, that's what happens if they have enough proof, for a criminal court case. All right. All right, and this just shows some of the ups and downs. You can see how, professional licensing cases are growing. These graphs do not include the settlements that happen, so when it doesn't have to go to a contested hearing, but the person agrees to a just settlement, that would probably either double or triple the type of volume that we have been seeing. So you can see those have been increasing. They certainly increased in Board of Nursing, just as an example, really increased in 2024, and then it's also a growing area. The next thing I just wanted to touch on is some of what we do to defend the state in litigation. One part of the office that certainly needs more resources is our Civil Litigation Division. These are the attorneys that are dedicated to defending the state in civil suits and safeguard taxpayer dollars from different types of tort claims and other lawsuits. And so this work is very important because there are many claims that are brought against the state. When there are those that can be settled and that it is meritorious to pursue settlement, that is something that our office does. But other times, if these cases are not defended adequately, it would result in a great loss of taxpayer dollars. So we're asking for this sum to be able to hire 6 more attorneys in the civil litigation section. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about our Solicitor General's office. That is where we do many things, including protecting the appeal position of the state to make sure that it's consistent, work on a number of complex legal issues, but also defend state laws, including laws that have been passed here by the legislature. So we have defended such laws as the laws on THC drinks, the age-appropriate books in school law, the heartbeat law. We have defended and asked, year-round E15, several different challenges. Also defending the PBM law, the Pharmacy Benefit Managers Law. That is still going through the process. We won half of it's up on appeal and being cross-appealed. And then also defended legislative privilege type issues before the court. So that is what our Solicitor General's office does within our office. And then we also continue to do consumer protection, which is asked to, if you're hearing from people in your district that are having problems either with a business or maybe with a con artist, please reach out to our office and we'll do everything we can to help. We try to help Iowans who've been ripped off or having troubles with a business to get their money back if at all possible. And we have filed lawsuits to help too, including a lawsuit against the crypto ATMs to get people their money back and appreciate the law the legislature recently passed to help with that. Suing certain social media companies like TikTok, but also will help someone if they had a problem with a used car or a car repair or a door-to-door sale or all kinds of different things. My office just put out a top 10 list of consumer complaints, and as you look through there, you might see some things that, should you come across them in your town halls or when you're serving your constituents, please reach out and we'll do what we can do under the law to help people. We had one person, I'll just give an example, because somebody was surprised that our office would do this. They had their oil changed, but the mechanic forgot to put the oil back in and it fried the engine. That's just a disaster, right? And so this person reached out to our office, and long story short, this Iowan was able to have the mechanic pay for a new engine. So very thankful for that, because we know how important having a car is to our constituents. It's so important to be able to get around and get to where you need to go. So all kinds of problems. If we can help, we will do that. So we'd ask you to refer them to our office or let people know to reach out to us and we will help them. Also, another one that comes up a lot, I'll just mention, someone's social media will get hacked and that will be their side business where they help to bring in additional income. So maybe they lose control of their Facebook page and that's how they communicate with their cupcake customers or whatever it is their business is. Facebook, good luck sometimes getting that figured out, right? That can be very frustrating. If the Iowan will reach out to us, we will do what we can do. We've been able to get people control of their Facebook pages back again and let them continue to engage in their business. So we like to help people with that every time we can.
Go ahead, because I do hear that about that from a lot of people. What is it that you can do that they can't?
Yeah, we can call Facebook on the phone and tell them what the problem is, and then we figure out what Facebook needs to turn their account back on and give them control again. So a lot of times it's proving they really are who they say they are. So we help people with that. I know it's really hard in an online world when you have a customer service problem, but you have to only go through online systems. I think we've all had times where that was very frustrating. But when somebody calls our office, now I can't do it that day, it takes some time. But we work through that and we're able, for most people, to get their page turned back on and get them control of their own page again when they're hacked and they have a takeover. Yeah.
That's good to know. Maybe if you provide us a little blurb for our own social media,
Sure.
to let our constituents know
Yeah.
that's available.
Well, you know, it might be helpful if you want, we can also send you our top 10 list because that shows you some of the most common things and it gives some examples of what might be included there. And if there's ever something that's not on the list and you think, you know, it maybe, you know, should be handled, reach out. And if it's something we can do, we will.
Representative.
Recently, I sent you, some spam letters that were happening in Kansas, imitating the, IRS and immigration.
Yeah.
Have we seen any of that here?
When we checked on that, we had not yet seen that here, right, Dan? But it's very helpful when we get those types of letters because it helps us to be on guard. And one thing that we do, depending on if there's something sudden like that, where we can see that people are really being targeted, sometimes we'll be able to get it out to the TV stations and radio and warn people. You know, we recently had that happen with a fake arrest scam that was happening, and I think a number of people were saved from sending these con artists money. So I'm really glad you sent that to our office.
That was targeting some high wealth elderly people in Kansas City. So after they sent that to me, they found several dozen others similar. So just FYI.
We continue to keep an eye out because these scammers tend to find one thing and if it starts to work, they do that same horrible scam in another state. So we do keep an eye on those things. We've even had them trying to imitate our office.
Representative Butler.
Yes, it's, again, thank you for being here, but this one hit me this weekend. I got a text here the other day at the Capitol when I was working, that I had just purchased a $1,200 T-Mobile phone, and they need to have me authorize that. I didn't respond to it because it looked kind of fishy, so I spent 2.5 hours at the local T-Mobile store waiting to get some service because they were very busy, of course. And then she took one look at it and says, no, but we've been seeing a lot of those here lately. I mean, they had the T-Mobile logo, I mean, it looked official as could be. But the lady that served me that day said this is becoming a huge problem in the communications business as well.
Yeah.
Just for what it's worth.
Well, these scams are very sophisticated. So I mean this when I say this. I believe anybody in this room could be taken advantage of because they are that sophisticated, including myself in that as well. They are very sophisticated. Another thing that I'll just, to use at your town halls, we have reason to believe they are targeting people who have recently lost a spouse. So, especially if you know someone who's recently lost a spouse, just make sure that others come in and offer that kind of support to that person because we know that's a vulnerable time for anyone going through that. And it's a time that takes several years to lose your spouse and go through all of that. And so we're seeing an uptick there.
What would that scam be?
Well,
How are they trying to take advantage of that?
Sure. So I say that we see that because we look at our cases and look at what some of the common threads are. So it could be a fake lottery scam where they say someone has won the lottery but they have to pay something. It could be a romance scam. These often target widows and widowers. So the person isn't who they say they are at all. They build a friendship that blossoms into a romance, and then they have family trouble, legal trouble, other problems, and they get the good-hearted Iowan who wants to help people to send them money. And it's deeply manipulative and horribly wrong. It's very painful for the people that are victimized in this way. Or it could be, sometimes we see the grandkids in jail. They know the name because they look it up online, and don't call mom and dad because they don't want to get in trouble. And so their lawyer is calling grandma in the middle of the night when she's just waking up. Hard to get a middle of the night call, your grandkids in jail, that everybody goes on alert if that kind of thing would happen. And then they're asking for money for that too. So it could be any type of scam. There's really not one. We found it even with the scams that were being facilitated by crypto ATMs. That was a common thread. Yeah. We just have to look out for our friends and neighbors. We also have scam education that we do. If you have a community group, if we're able to come, we speak to all kinds of different groups about how to protect yourself and how to protect your friends and family and neighbors. So we're really glad to do that. Prevention works.
Thank you. Representative Madison, have you got a question?
Thank you for coming, Representatives. What about tow truck companies? Now, they're not all doing fraudulent business practices, but when they tow a vehicle, and then the person that owns the vehicle is not allowed back in to get anything out of it unless they sign the title. Does that become legislative or legalese for you?
Yeah, well, let me say this. If you have somebody a constituent having problems with an unscrupulous tow company, that's a complaint that they can make with our office. And we would follow state law and what it says. And if the legislature wants people to have access to their car to get something out of it, you would need to change state law, and then we could help people do that. So we would follow whatever the existing law is, but we do help people who are having problems with tows if it's violating state law. Yeah, good question. That's another one that we get questions about. Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate your time and attention today.
We're not done if you got homework.
Did we talk about technology, or did I skip that? Well, I should never skip technology. How could I do that? So as you know, the practice of law is very much based on technology. So this is the funding that we've received the last 3 years. So we'd ask for the same line item amount for the cybersecurity and IT infrastructure, and then ask for the same amount from the technology reinvestment fund as well. The greatest needs we have right now, we did a lot of rebuilding the cybersecurity and technology in our office when we started back in 2023. And so what we need now, we still continue to need to replace laptops and other equipment, upgrade cybersecurity, but also an office-wide case management system, as the one that's been used is no longer supported and doesn't interact with existing programs in a way where it can be supported. And when I say can't be supported, that means it could crash. So we are looking at options that we can use for that, and we are rolling, in fact, last year's unspent technology reinvestment fund money over into the transition cost to transition to the new platform that we will have. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Representative Thompson?
We passed a law 2 years ago, better defining grooming, and it's my observation from the news that there's at least 4 or 5 individuals over by Manchester being charged with that. Is your office involved in that?
So we receive a lot of calls from, we receive many calls from county attorneys when there are new criminal laws that are passed by the legislature, some tips for how to do that. And we certainly have received a lot of calls about grooming cases, evidence needed, how to prosecute. So county attorneys are aware of that, and there are times that we are providing advice to county attorneys so that they have what they need for the prosecution. Other types of cases we prosecute, but with only 13 prosecutors, we tend to focus on a lot of murder and sex abuse cases, that's not to say that we wouldn't help with the case, but, we're stretched pretty thin with what we have right now. But we certainly provide resources and help, everything that someone would need in order to prosecute a grooming case and, to gather the evidence that's needed for trial.
And I understand that county attorneys have an annual meeting. Do you provide updates on legislation that's gonna impact their jobs in that? Because frankly, I've talked to my own county attorney, and he's unaware of certain statutes that are criminal, not just civil. So is that something that goes on?
Yeah, so there's two different big meetings of county attorneys that my office organizes for them, that are continuing legal education. So among those things, we provide an update on all of the criminal laws that passed in the last year, as well as significant court cases that they should be aware of. And we conduct training on everything from OWIs leading to death, type of trial for those, to murder cases, sex abuse investigations, the juvenile justice work that they do, and the civil work that they do. So we provide all of that training twice a year, and every county attorney and assistant county attorney is welcome to attend that. They can't always come, but it's certainly encouraged that every county attorney would come at least to one of those big meetings that lasts, one lasts 3.5 days, and the other one I think is a little longer, like 4 days. That's quite comprehensive, and we do address the new laws that have been passed by the legislature.
Representative Ramirez.
Thank you. I have a few questions. The first kind of set of questions have to do with the 7 felony cases filed against those who were voting without citizenship status. Do you partner with the Secretary of State's office to look at the flagged cases, so to speak, of people that you think might have voted without documentation?
We certainly had the problem under the prior presidential administration where the Secretary of State had identified people that had reported they weren't citizens at one point, but then also voted in an Iowa election, but then the federal government would not confirm whether people had been naturalized as citizens. That has now been resolved with a settlement agreement that provides the Secretary of State access to data so that the Secretary of State can determine when someone is naturalized and have that then not be a concern, because then they would be a U.S. citizen and certainly entitled and encouraged to vote. With regard to the 7 cases, each of those are investigated like any other criminal case. So it could start from a referral from the Secretary of State's office, or it could start from a referral from another source.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And just to make sure that I understand, the 7 felony cases were filed. The people in the defendants in those cases have not been yet to be found guilty.
No, some have and some have not. Okay.
Would I be able to get an updated?
Sure, yes. Yeah, we give you the same list. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Because I think we promised that to Representative, was it?
Russell Purcell.
Yeah, Western Purcell. Yeah, so we'll give you both your list.
Great, thank you. I just want to make sure that it's understood.
We'll give it to
that-
everybody. How's
Sounds
that?
good. I just wanted to be understood that there were 7 felony cases in the entire state of Iowa in 2025 that were filed
Yes,
for non-citizens voting.
That's correct.
7 out of, what's our population in Iowa currently?
3.2 million maybe or so.
Great, thank you. And then I have a separate set of questions around the line item for victim assistance grants. After speaking to some service providers that I know your office works very closely with, it was understood from my perspective that in order for victim support services to really thrive in Iowa, we would need $10 million dedicated to victim services. I see in your line item, it's remains stagnant between 2025 and projected for 2027. Can you speak a little bit more to
Yeah,
that?
so we requested an additional $1 million also for trafficking victims, so I wouldn't say that it's stagnant. But I'll tell you this, if the legislature would give us more money to help victims and victim services agencies, we would be very glad to facilitate that and make sure that that funding is helping as many people as we can help. Sure.
Thank you.
Just back on the 7 felony cases were filed, were they all related to a non-citizen voting, or were there other improprieties that may be prosecuted as well?
Yeah, these are related to non-citizen voting. The 7th.
The 7th?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Thank you. Then just a couple of things. One, and I think there's no other, anybody else have a question? And I'll just finish up with, one, if you can also distribute your deck slide, slide deck to all of us, that'd be great.
Oh, sure.
Just so we have that information. But also the opioid settlement, funds that you all received in your office. Couple of things, a couple of questions. One, what is the RFP process that you all promulgated? I think that came out not that long ago.
Yeah, that's right.
And then, is there any particular focus of grants you all are looking at, to try to fund through that? You know, is it law enforcement related, is it treatment related, whatever, and I don't really care, I'm just trying to get a feel for it. Because I know I have people coming to me all the time saying, where do we go for these funds? So if there's either, should I direct them to HHS's process, should I send it to your process, whichever one. So what are you guys looking to fund, and what is that process?
So, my recommendation would be that you would direct them to both HHS and my office. We work together with HHS in talking about what types of funding there would be, and we certainly want people to maximize their chances of having a good project funded. So, we have information that we have provided about what we're looking for, what will be required as part of the application process for the funding. And then I think we're anticipating later this week, putting an announcement out so that people can file their application right through our website to make it easier. So we're looking forward to that. You know, some of the things that we look for are things that are effective in addressing the opioid crisis. And it can be all types of different things. Perhaps one thing that may be different with our office, I want to make sure that every part of Iowa is served. And so if there's a small project, we would not look at a small project and say that it was too small. If it was effective, we would look at that, and we're going to do those on a rolling basis, so that we have a chance to deploy that funding so that it can help people and people can continue to apply. Yeah. So we just, feel free to direct them to our office, and Dan Brightworth can also help people with accessing that information. And then I have some really great news. You should ask DPS about this as well, but the number of the fentanyl pills, the ones that were resulting in so many devastating deaths around Iowa, they're down 80%. 80%. And I think a lot of that is due to the border being secure and some of the other interdiction efforts, but what great news that we could get. And we've also seen the number of overdose deaths decreasing, although we know every single one matters, and we want to get it to 0, but we're glad to help with opioid funding as those requests come in.
In fentanyl, I mean, I'd say that's a huge one, that's making most of the news. There's been an uptick, at least there was an uptick as well with xylazine. And
Yeah.
has that continued to rise, or is that?
It
like
rises.
lysine?
No, xylazine is a problem. So, it's not as much of a problem as fentanyl, but you can look at those DPS numbers and you can see there was an uptick in xylazine last year, which is a concern. That does not respond to the same treatments that fentanyl can respond to save someone's life, like Narcan, because it's a different type of drug. It's also one that's very devastating for people that use that. Sometimes it's stolen from veterinary clinics where it has a very important large animal vet use. It's a very important drug for them to have access to serve horses and other large animals, but very addictive to humans and devastating. It's also sometimes called tranq. People have heard it by that name.
Unfortunately, I haven't really run into that too much.
I hope nobody does.
Yeah, Representative Thompson.
Can you explain the role of the AG's office in asset forfeiture?
Yes, and we could answer more detailed questions too, but many times asset forfeitures are gonna take place on the county level with those cases. A lot of times they can be involved in drug cases or other cases. There can be other types of cases though where they can be involved, where our office would be more likely to be involved, like a trafficking case or other type of case. So it's a separate case that's filed for forfeiting, for example, cash, or maybe something like a vehicle, and then that goes through the court process. The judge then decides whether it is or is not forfeited, and then when it's forfeited, there's a way that those forfeited monies are paid out, so that the local entity that sees the forfeited, for example, money, they're able to get a, significant amount of money, and then it flows through. I don't have the percentages committed to memory, but if that's something you needed, we can get that to you.
And perhaps even more specifically, in the realm of restitution, we had the police officer that was murdered in Algona.
Yep, my office prosecuted that case.
$150,000 restitution, and the widow hasn't got a dime. So, is asset forfeiture an option?
An option for,
Getting her $150,000, even if it goes beyond his bank account?
the forfeited funds are typically used to pay for equipment that's needed for law enforcement and for, training. And so that would mean that, if the way that forfeitures worked, had that changed, that would mean those agencies wouldn't have money for some equipment training, so that could be a problem too. It's not in an account where it's not being used.
So it doesn't help with paying people restitution that the court ordered?
Not to my knowledge, no. We can check on that, but I've not heard that, no.
And that would be something we'd probably have to look at legislatively to change that if we were so inclined.
And I wanna be clear, I haven't looked into changing that, so I'm not sure that we can answer that today, the impact of all those changes. It'll be something we'd be glad to answer your questions as you work through it.
Thank you. Anything else from the committee? Well, we want to thank you for being here today, Attorney General, and appreciate the work you do. And we'll be in touch when we get the budget time.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you very much.